Hello, everyone, and welcome to Attuning to the Voice of Mother Earth, How to Hear Her and Follow Her Call Global Conference, where through inspiring interviews, we are invited to explore real actions we can take as individuals to deepen our connection to Mother Earth, while at the same time discovering a way to our truer selves. My name is Zacharow. I'm your host and a producer of Attuning to the Voice of Mother Earth Summit and a founder of Sisters Wellspring. We are here today with Dr. Rollin McCraty of the HeartMath Institute. Welcome, Dr. McCraty.
Thank you. It's nice to be here with you.
Yeah, it is a real honor to have you here with us. I'm going to go ahead and read your bio as an introduction to our audience. Rollin McCraty, PhD, is a director of research of the HeartMath Research Center at the HeartMath Institute. As a psychophysiologist, Dr. McCraty's research interests include the physiology of emotion, heart-brain communication, and the global interconnectivity between people and the Earth energetic system. Findings from his research have been applied to development of tools and technology to optimize individual and organizational health, performance, and quality of life. Dr. McCraty has acted as the principal investigator in numerous studies examining the effects of emotions on heart-brain interactions, on autonomic cardiovascular, hormonal, and immune system function, and outcome studies to determine the benefits of positive emotion-focused interactions and heart rhythm coherence feedback in diverse organizational, educational, and various clinical populations. He has been featured in a number of documentary films, such as I Am, The Truth, The Joy of Socks movie, The Power of the Heart, Solar Revolution, and The Living Matrix, among many others. And his topic of discussion for today is the heart and the field of the collective consciousness. So we're just gonna go ahead and not waste any time and going right into the questions. So Dr. McCraty, you mentioned in your writings that the earth fields have frequencies that are the same as those of humans. So can you tell us what they are and why this is important?
Okay. Well, that's a little bit to unpack that one. It's quite true that, of course, as I would suggest that any living system or being, animal, plant, everything on Earth lives within a sea of electromagnetic fields. We don't always think about that. I'm not talking about power lines and things. Now I'm talking about natural fields. One, of course, is the geomagnetic field. The thing our compass is tuned into. It has a north and south pole, and this is a pure magnetic field around the Earth. Magnetic field of the Earth. Just to give a little context here, if we kind of time travel back to when we were in school, in science class, most of us got to dump iron filings on a glass plate, right? You put your magnet under it, and they all kind of magically, the iron filings line up and show you the shape of the magnetic field, depending upon whatever your magnet is. But if you remember, those iron filings line up in lines, right? They're not just homogeneous black blob.
Yes,
They're
yes.
lines. So what that's showing you is giving you kind of a visual picture of what are called magnetic field lines. So these are very real things. And Earth's magnetic field is the same way, right? We have these field lines. Now, here's where this becomes important in terms of us in all living systems. One of the kind of very neat things, and quite literally, you can pluck those field lines and they vibrate just like a guitar string. And just like a guitar string, they have a resonant frequency, right? Or a note or a tone, whatever you want to call it, from the vibration of the lines. So the Earth's magnetic field lines are very long. Of course, they go out from the North Pole and thousands of miles into space, hundreds of thousands actually, and come into the South Pole. So they're very long, so they have a low note or a low frequency. Now, what's plucking the field lines, causing them to vibrate, is the solar wind rushing by the Earth. So the solar wind is enough pressure that it pushes in the magnetic field on the daytime side and stretches it out on the nighttime side as it rushes by. Meanwhile, Earth is turning, right? And so is the sun as far as that goes. So it's this complex interplay of the field lines getting plucked. Now the frequency of the vibrations of the field lines is the same as the human heart rhythms, especially when we're in what we call a coherent heart rhythm, which we naturally go into when we're sincerely or genuinely feeling things like love, compassion, appreciation, naturally, our system has a resonant frequency as well, the human system, heart-brain communication system, which is 0.1 hertz, which is exactly the same frequency as one of the primary field resonant frequencies of the Earth's field lines. And these are called field line resonances. Kind of actually appropriate term. In this case, science got it right and didn't make it all complex. Actually call it what it is. So that's one way that we are vibrating or resonating at the same frequency as Earth. And then there's a second one that's also important, completely different mechanism, set of magnetic waves that travel around the surface of the Earth. So to help understand that, I need to get a little Earth here so I can have a model to show these things. But if you think,
I have a model.
right, I've got a globe back here, but something I can hold. So, but if you think around the Earth, starting about 50 miles up from the surface of the Earth, all around the Earth, is what's called the ionosphere. So you can think of this as a soap bubble around the planet, kind of visually. And the ionosphere is a layer of highly ionized gases and ions and things, and it's what's called plasma, fourth state of matter in physics, has very special properties. And one of the properties of the ionosphere, of this sheet of plasma around the planet, is that they act like a mirror to magnetic waves. So what this means is that certain magnetic frequencies, if they fit the geometry, between the surface of the Earth and the bottom of the ionosphere, they travel all around the Earth in all these kind of complex ways. And these are called Schumann Resonances. Some people have heard of them. And there's 8 of them. The first one is 7.8 hertz, 7.83 to be precise. And some people might recognize that if you know brain rhythm frequencies. So that's in what's called the alpha range, right? But all 8 Schumann resonances have overlaps directly to our human brain waves.
Wow.
Okay. Now the field line resonances, the first thing I talked about, are much more powerful magnetically speaking. So it's really kind of, I don't know that it means anything, but it probably does. So if we look at the human system, when the heart beats, when we put electrodes across the chest and measure the electrocardiogram, why is it called that, the electrocardiogram? Because we're measuring electricity, literally, right?
Of the heart.
The electrical current generated by the beating heart. Well, basic physics, whenever you have a flow of current of electricity, you create a magnetic field. And one of the things about magnetic fields is they penetrate things, right? So that's why our cell phones work inside of a building. So the magnetic field kind of goes through the walls and goes, even it can be inside of an elevator and your cell phone works, right? So we know this is true. And so, but just like in a cell phone where we carry information by electromagnetic field, or voice, right? The text message, whatever we're sending, carrying that information, the heart does the same thing. So its field easily radiates outside the body. And through resonance, just like we use in cell phones to capture the frequency we want out of the air, when 2 vibrations are at the same frequency, they can transfer information between them, right? So our hearts and brains are vibrating at the same frequency as Earth, so we can transfer information between the big fields of Earth that we all live in and us. Hope I'm making sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like magic.
Well, yeah.
But it's not, because it's science, like you said.
Yeah, right. My previous career was a communication engineer, so it's kind of neat that I had that background to understand these things. Well, in fact, if you travel back to science class again, not only did we get usually to put iron filings on glass plates, but a lot of us got to play with tuning forks. The tuning, it's a common analogy where you have 2 tuning forks tuned to the same frequency, right? And you tap one and the other, it vibrates, but the other tuning fork starts to vibrate with it. Right? So you've transferred what that is called resonant or resonant coupling more precisely. And that's just an easy way to demonstrate when 2 systems vibrate at the same frequency, you can transfer energy and information between them.
That's wonderful.
Right. So in the case of our tuning forks, it's the air molecules that carry the energy between them. But it works exactly the same way with magnetic fields. You just don't need the air molecules. That's how our cell phones work, or TV, any radio transmitter. You vibrate electrons up and down in an antenna, and they create fields that radiate out. And then we have our receiver, our cell phone, or our radio. It has an antenna, so they vibrate up and down in the antenna of it. And if they're the same, tuned to the same frequency, you easily transfer the information, and we amplify it, and voila, you're hearing the sound or seeing the picture or whatever. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's really like amazing to hear. So I guess I just want to ask you like the follow-up question. How do we attune to that frequency? How do we pick up the cell phone to our planet?
Well, here's the thing, we already are. It's happening whether you're aware of it or not.
Conscious or not.
Yeah, now if we get into a heart coherent state, that increases our coherence. So if I go back to our tuning forks, we don't usually talk about this in high school science, but they're highly coherent systems. So you have to have coherence to have resonance. So we have a resonant frequency, and what we call that, we named that heart coherence when we're vibrating in our natural coherent frequency. And what's really awesome about this, or I think really fascinating, is that we naturally go into our coherent mode when we're in a more loving, compassionate state, when we're actually feeling those emotions. So coherence, there's over 400 studies now, all published independent, about some of our initial work on coherence. So basically, coherence is an optimal state that really facilitates about everything you can think of, right? So but it's especially related to when our mind and emotions are brought into alignment and synchronization with our heart's intuitive wisdom or guidance.
Wow.
So we finally manage the emotions, right? So it might, in these days, it might be, there's obviously a lot of fear going on. I mean, how couldn't there be? And in some cases, even panic and extreme fear.
Of course.
And the only way to really, well, I wouldn't say the only way, but one of the more effective ways is for the fear, the mind, the emotions to be brought into alignment with our heart's and more intuitive wisdom. Now I'm kind of jumping on you a little bit here, but this is really what goes on, and that can help take some of the intensity out of the fear. So we talk here at HeartMath about managed concern, which is different than fear, right? So if we can take the fear energy into more managed concern, right, it can help take some of the intensity out. Now, this is important in relative to our topic, because what I'm saying here is that we're all connected to the field, right? And all feeding that field are thoughts and emotions, attitudes, and the reactions we have in our interactions and so on. So right now, the field is being fed in a massive way with lots of fear.
Yes.
So that's in the field, and we're all living in the field. So you could be in a cave, right? Not even know what's going on with the coronavirus and all this, but still feel that fear, because it's in the global field that we're all connected. So on the other hand, when we're able to get operate from a more coherent state, really practicing the state of coherence, which has a lot of benefits. It creates a cascade of neural and biochemical events that really benefit us. Strengthen the immune system. In fact, we've shown that in some of our studies back in the 90s, that when we get coherent and feel things like compassion, that actually increases the first line of defense in our immune system. Whereas when we're fearful or frustration, these types of feelings, that actually decreases immunity, right? So there's a lot of personal benefits to really practicing being more coherent. But it also puts a stronger field, or a stronger signal, I should say, coherent signal into our personal field environment and the global field environment. And when we do that, practice that together, right, in groups, and you don't have to be sitting next to each other. It's energetically, just like radio waves. They can become coherent together, which amplifies their effect. And then it helps amplify the benefits for really all living systems that are in the field. So I said a lot there. So hopefully that made sense in a way that people can understand it.
Yeah, I think you basically put it together, because I asked the question of how we're connected to, how do we connect to the planet, but we're saying we already are connected. So how we manage our field is what matters. So since we are on this topic, can you touch a little bit on how to make sure that we are more in the compassionate field and the kind of the beneficial heart rhythm and not necessarily the dynamic of fear?
Well, sure. There are a number of heart math techniques that help us shift into coherence. And one of the focuses as we do here at Heart Math, I mean, we have one of our techniques is a meditation. So you hear a lot about meditation these days, and that's wonderful. We call that a heart lock-in, where you're really locking into that coherent rhythm, that coherent signal. But most of our techniques are really meant to be used in the moment and help us navigate the challenges of daily life, especially in a stressful world like we have right now with all the things going on. Of course, it's a lot of stress and a lot of with all the families now being together and having to deal with the kids and homeschooling and especially the healthcare workers. I mean, a lot of us, I know this is probably a lot of people might be watching this hopefully after the coronavirus has passed, but I can't help but have a lot of compassion for the frontline workers. I mean, so a lot of us are sheltered in place, right? Kind of all worried about our, not catching it, but we've got thousands, hundreds of thousands of healthcare workers who are right in the middle of this day after day, really caring for people with the virus and all the concerns. So there's one way right there to help evoke, I think, compassion. And it's some of the stories I'm hearing. We do a lot of work in hospitals. A lot of hospitals use heart math training for nurses and doctors and to help them be more coherent and grounded, if you will, to really be able to maintain their composure in the middle of a lot of stress. So it's so you can imagine there's a lot going on right now with us. But some of the stories we're hearing from healthcare workers is, I mean, that's almost hard to believe. There was some healthcare workers that work at a hospital we work with is telling me that the facility where they live, they're actually being evicted because the other residents are fearful that they might bring the virus back. I mean, it's the craziest thing I've ever heard of.
What?
It's just nuts what's going on, how the fear is just leading to these unreasonable, really out of alignment with what our deeper heart would really want to say. I mean, I think we should be doing everything we can to support those people, not adding more stress burden to them.
Yeah, because at some point in time, you might be the one asking them to move back and take care of you.
Yeah, these are the things that are going on. So that's what we're feeding the field. But anyway, I got off topic. But
no, that's wonderful. That's just good for all of us to know that the Heart Math Institute has specific steps and resources in order to get the heart in alignment.
Right. So the first step, just to help people here, is we call heart-focused breathing. And heart-focused breathing, you kind of pretend your breath is flowing right through the center of your chest, the heart area. And you breathe a little slower than deeper than you normally would, but you find a comfortable rhythm. So the coherence rhythm is around 4 or 5 seconds on the in-breath, 4 or 5 seconds on the out-breath. But I don't want people overthinking and staying in their head, but that would be the breathing rhythm that will help shift you into coherence. Now, the heart focus is important because where we focus attention, we know there's a whole industry based on the fact that where we focus attention in our body, we can create specific shifts. Like if I put a sensor on your arm, and with training, you can change the temperature and the blood flow. In this case, we're wanting to shift the rhythms of the heart into what we call a coherent rhythm, right? So heart-focused breathing, step one. And that's really grandma's wisdom in a way. I like to think of it. I mean, when, if you have a small child, they fall down and, they're crying, you pick them up. What's one of the first things after you make sure blood's not squirting out or something?
You hug them, you hold them.
You hold them, but don't you say breathe?
Of course. Deep breaths,
right? Because we know that breathing, taking some breaths like that, will help take the intensity out of an emotional, reaction or upset. So heart-focused breathing just helps shift us into coherence. I'm going to diverge a little bit here because I think a lot of people don't know this, but it's been known forever, or since the late 1800s anyway, is that the heart actually sends more information through our nervous system to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. So when we take those deep breaths or we do heart-focused breathing, that shifts us into coherence. So the heart's sending a very different message to the brain, which it's interpreting as, we're okay. We're in that natural state of when we're coherent. Again, the brain associates with, appreciation and feeling good, right? That we're safe, everything's okay. So then the next step after we do heart-focused breathing, this is the simplest of the heart math techniques, called quick coherence, is then you want to try and self-activate a feeling that we call it a regenerative emotion. And that could be one of appreciation, is a good one to start with, because you can appreciate that it's a good day out, right? Or I have a home, or I don't have the virus, or I do have the virus, but I'm okay, right? I mean,
many blessings, yes.
Anything, or it could be a feeling of compassion, but any of those regenerative emotions that will then take us into a deeper level of coherence and sustain that. So that's a quick shift we can do while we're driving. This is the nice thing about these type of techniques, is you can do it anytime, anywhere. You have your eyes open. Nobody needs to know you're doing this, right? So it's a way that we can really help navigate the day-to-day challenges that we have. Mm-hmm. And as we get more coherent, the big benefit, I kind of alluded to this earlier, is that opens a channel, if you will, or connects us with what we call the heart's deeper intuitive guidance, our inner GPS. Mm-hmm. In fact, so we've done a number of studies that actually show that the heart, it does have access to another type of information, or intuition, we call it. So if we really want to find the voice of our deeper inner voice, it really does, we're suggesting, come from what we call the energetic heart. We have a physical heart, but we also have an energetic heart that's operating more at the energetic level. So anyway, I'm rambling again.
No, you're not. That's very interesting. I think the techniques are wonderful, especially in the moment techniques. I think this is what a lot of us are searching for, and it's key to shifting your focus as you go during your daily activity. So it's very interesting to know, and we'll know that the HeartMath Institute has all sorts of resources to that effect. But I wanted to ask you, you've mentioned at the beginning that the electromagnetic fields of the earth are being kind of dictated or affected by the solar wind. So can you talk a little bit about that, and like what are the ways that we're affected by the sun?
Well, there are many ways.
They affect, I guess it's affecting our field as well, right?
Well, right. So we live within the Earth's field.
Mm-hmm.
And, so most of the days, the solar wind is rushing by the Earth at about 1 million miles per hour. That's on a quiet day. So it travels very quickly. But that's still slow compared to light and the photons and things from the sun. So when there's a solar flare, right, or a solar storm, it's sometimes called, if it happens to be pointed towards Earth, there's a big change in the solar wind. It becomes very turbulent, and its speed jumps way up. And if that hits Earth, that disturbs the magnetic field we live within. So when the magnetic field gets disturbed, which fortunately isn't that often, I mean, it's not a daily occurrence, but that is associated with all kinds of different effects on humans, on us. So for a common one is, and we're all affected, just at different degrees of sensitivity. Mm-hmm. People might not be sleeping as well, might have a restless night. You might, if you ever wake up in the morning and kind of feel out of sorts, but you don't know why, it's not because you had an argument with your spouse or something. You just, we all have those bad days, right? Mm-hmm. We got up on the wrong side of the bed, that kind of thing. Well, a lot of times if you pay attention and look, you'll find that that's a day that we had a large magnetic field disturbance. Or it can also be, right, because there's something happened here on Earth, like a terrorist attack or a shooting, school shooting, or something that triggered a lot of mass emotional outpouring, right, of a similar feeling, and that's also in the field. So that we feel these things, but don't always know how to connect the dots and put them together. But usually it'll be one of those two things, right? So then there's also, so the sun's, that's one thing. The sun is also radiating, in addition to the light, the day-night stuff that we see, what's called solar radio flux, which is a radio wave frequency, about 2.8 gigahertz. And that's, that one travels at the speed of light, so it gets here in 8 minutes, where the solar wind takes about 3 days to get here, even though it's 1 million miles per hour, right? So the radio flux also affects us, but in a positive way. When that's increased, we actually see that we have more energy, tend to feel better, have higher heart rate variability, we call it, which is a key indicator of health and well-being. So there are a lot of interactions between this sea or this world of electromagnetics we live within, both from outside of the solar system, cosmic rays, can have effects on us in a positive way as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what number of studies, this is really interesting, I think, are starting to indicate now and show is that some of these energetic things we live in are actually energy for us, that we absorb them as energy. So when like the solar radio flux, or when the Schumann resonances are higher, or the field line resonances are coherent, there's less hospital admissions. We tend to have, when we've done large studies, with one study we did a number of years ago with 1,600 people around the world, when these energies are coherent and higher, people are doing better. They have better cognitive or mental functions. They sleep better, just feel better. And physiologically, we've done studies now that show that they actually have more of this heart rate variability I was talking about, which is a key indicator of health. So, but when they're disturbed, that's not good. But when they're coherent and higher, that is good for us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So how often do the solar radio flux or frequencies come in, like the good one?
They're always, it's constant.
It's constant.
They have variations, modulations up and down, but we're always living in all of these energies that I'm talking about.
So every 8 minutes.
No, it's constant. I mean, you're saying that once if you
just travels 8 minutes.
Yeah, if you had a change in it, it'd take like the speed of light.
That's good to know. So can you tell us how do you can you explain how are you monitoring the Earth?
Sure. So we've installed a global network of ultra-sensitive magnetic field detectors around the Earth. Wish we didn't have to do this ourselves, but nothing else existed like this, along with other types of scientific instruments. So we're measuring through these really sensitive magnetometers the fluctuations in the field, right? So then we're also studying humans, people, and different other systems. So this is helping us understand our interconnected relationship, and it's really kind of creating one of the world's largest experiments from our perspective, from what we call the Global Coherence Initiative, really the scientific study of how we can collectively evolve human consciousness, how we're interconnected with these various fields.
Well, so can you just tell us a little more, and how do we increase our personal coherence, and how do we help create the global coherence? Like, especially in a moment like this, I feel like it's especially relevant, where we can be overtaken by the fear, or we can shift and work together into creating global coherence.
Yeah, so I would say more managed concern versus fear can help offset.
Exactly, yes.
I mean, nothing's just going to make all the fear go away for everybody. I mean, but we can use these techniques to really help manage the fear, or the angers and the frustrations. It's not just fear. I mean, of all the stresses that are going on now. I mean, fear is a big one, but there's a lot of other ones. I mean, the frustrations, impatience, and insecurities, and all the things that are also going on. But it's really ultimately learning to be responsible for our own energy, if you will, our own personal field environment. I also like to think about it as our emotional diet, and we have a lot more power to self-regulate and choose our emotional diet than most people believe or understand. Most people just haven't been taught how. Exactly. Yeah, but it does take a little effort to first learn it, and then we train our system to that becomes our new normal. So these techniques, and if people want to learn more about them, it's easy to do. There's a lot of free resources on the HeartMath Institute website, heartmath.org. But then you have to practice them.
Absolutely.
And as that increases our coherence, that increases our alignment and synchronization with our heart's intuitive guidance. And then that really brings in a new inner voice into our choices and our decisions, discernments that we make. I mean, I can ask it maybe this way might help. What is for yourself? Has ever been a situation maybe in the last, few days, week or something even, where you were either asked to do something or thought you should do something, but you just had a deeper inner sense that maybe wasn't the best choice?
Yeah, I think we go through it all the time, and a lot of it is unconscious, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really that deeper inner voice I'm suggesting really is the voice of our deeper heart's wisdom. That comes from a different dimension of our undivided wholeness. It's really us.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not talking about some separate thing out there or being or something. No, it is us.
Yes.
Just a deeper part of us. So learning to align and attune to that inner voice. Let me put it this way. I would suggest if we look globally, at humanity, the single largest source of stress and discord in people's lives is that lack of alignment and synchronization with our deeper inner voice and self. So it's that lack of alignment. Usually when we look back and we had that deeper sense, right, of something we probably shouldn't go that way or should go this way, but we don't listen to it.
Oh yeah.
We look back and go, oh my God, that the stress that created, right? And it can also, that's one way, but it can also be other things like, I don't know, maybe we had a little argument or said something that wasn't very nice to somebody. And we had that deeper inner sense that we really ought to clean that up.
Exactly.
Give them a call, go talk to them, apologize, but we don't follow that either. So these are the things that create separation, right? Separation between us and our really, who we really are at a deeper level. And then that manifests in the world as separation between others and people. I hope I'm kind of rambling here, but
no, you're not at all.
It's really learning, and what heart math techniques are really all about is getting ourselves more coherent. And that we know this scientifically, we've actually shown this, that increases that alignment or that the inner voice, if you will, the deeper inner voice of the heart. And then of course the next point is to have the courage and the dignity to follow it.
Absolutely, yeah.
Sometimes that gets in the way of what the mind wants, right? Our ambitions and our, selfish desires and so on.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, all of it makes sense. Like you were saying, we have the power, and therefore we need to have responsibility to create a practice, maybe a daily practice for me personally that would put me in coherence. I think I will need that. And now they have all these, I think, more recent studies about the brain, how you can, with practice, you can create different pathways in the brain instead of
That's
constant reaction. It's more of a conscious response and an action.
Well, right. That's what you're referring to as neuroplasticity, which is this means that the brain can rewire itself. But of course it can. Without neuroplasticity, we couldn't learn a new phone number. I mean, the learning long-term memory is all based on neuroplasticity. So it's obvious we have that. But as people, we talk a lot about this in our research and our trainings, and have measures around this as well, science down to the brain level, neural level. As we practice being coherent more often, right, and aligning, that does lead to structural changes in the brain and nervous system, where that becomes really what we call our new baseline, our new normal. So much of how we navigate a day is based on, if people really understood how much of our reactions and behaviors is based on past familiarity, it would freak most people out to realize how much of our consciousness and day-to-day interactions are based on the past familiar response patterns. You can call them habits, but it's a bit deeper than that. So as we practice coherence, it's actually one of the fastest ways to establish a new baseline at the level of the brain, so that being more coherent, more kind, more inclusive, more compassionate becomes our new normal.
Yeah.
Right. So
and
then we're also feeding the field, both our personal field, and by the way, our personal field environment, the magnetic field, heart, have affect other people. I mean, this is all published research. This is not some conjecture. We know this, that when we're more coherent, people in our local environment are positively affected in a measurable way. Right. So the vibrations in the fields we're radiating. Again, and I'm not talking auras or something. This stuff we can measure. How do I know this? We can put sensors out here and measure it, magnetic fields, and we can see that the heart's field, that the vibrational patterns being carried by it literally change in real time as our emotions change. Right. And we can also measure how that affects others. So when we're in coherence, it actually lifts others into more coherence. They start, just like the tuning forks. If we're putting out a coherent signal, other systems start vibrating more coherently as well, or at least have the opportunity to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we're really pissed off and mad, we can stay that way if we choose to. But when our field environment is more coherent, it creates an environment that makes it easier for people to make a shift and also become more coherent, more emotionally stable.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is so certainly we know this is true in our local environments, published research studies, other people there have actually duplicated it, and it's a very real thing. But we're also saying here that we're also coupled to the bigger, larger field environment. So to really answer, I think the question you asked me, how do we help offset the fear and stress and discord that's in our current field environment, is being responsible for what we're feeding the field, for sure, because we're always connected to the field.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I always invite listeners to do is really stop, pause throughout the day a few times and ask yourself, what am I feeding the field? How much of it am I feeding the field with fear or anxiety or frustration or impatience versus kindness, compassion, appreciation? That all counts. Now, if we really, how do we create a bigger coherence wave in the field? Well, one of the awesome ways to do that, in addition to practicing, because we're always plugged into the field, but when we come together and do as a group and get coherent together, that actually has an amplification effect, right? So we kind of have bigger waves rippling out through the field.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of organizations are collaborating now to do exactly this. So we kind of partner with some, we call it the Global Coherence Pulse, where we come together, and we've here at HeartMath Institute developed a new app. It's called the Global Coherence app, and I would invite listeners to download it. It's a free app that when people come together for these pulses to ripple more coherence into the field, that it's got a map. We can see where we are all around the world, so you know who's there with you right now, adding heart energy to the global field, right? And then we have a lot of events are happening right now around this, where we come together and do this. And for those that want to take it deeper, you can get one of our sensors that measures your heart rate variability, your heart rhythm in real time. And the Global Coherence app lets us measure not only how coherent are we personally, but how coherent are we collectively as a group, and track how much heart energy we're adding to the global field.
That is amazing.
So that's a lot of the partnering organizations we're working with are all suggesting and to their ambassadors and members and things that we all collectively use the app so that we can really track scientifically how much heart energy we're adding to the field. And then down the road here, we're adding new types of instruments, and we're even going to be monitoring the electrical potentials of trees, which is another living system. So we can really get I think the first time in history we'll have multiple measures of the global field environment. Our magnetometers around the Earth, another network that we're taking over called the Global Consciousness Project, which has shown a lot of, over the years, an amazing degree of how when a lot of humans together feel something, that it has a measurable impact globally in the global field environment. I mean, it's awesome research. So we're taking that over. In fact, that's really neat. One of the best studies and out of that project, my favorite anyway, guy Roger Nelson, Dr. Nelson, this is a 20-year long experiment now, measuring the global field environment, has shown that when we come together in love and compassion, that has a much stronger measurable, I'm talking about, effect in the field environment than when we're feeding the field things, lots of emotion, right? But more anger and responses to negative things. So love and compassion does cohere and have a larger impact measurably on the global field environment. So basically, when we come together in heart-based emotions together collectively, we can pulse the field, and that creates a stronger coherent signal in the big field that all living systems are in. So it's really helping all, plants, animals, everything, but especially other people that might be on the cusp of waking up, right? Have a stronger signal that helps move them to their next level in the waking up process.
That is amazing. I love your research. It's like John Lennon's song, Imagine all people. Really, reality.
Yeah. Well, as it turns out, what the science is saying is it's actually true, and that what we feel, what we feed the field does matter. Not just for, I mean, if nothing else, do it for your own personal health and well-being, because we know that as you practice these coherence techniques, it leads to lots of personal well-being and health benefits. Lowered blood pressure, better hormonal balance, on the list goes. But it's not just us that we're affecting when we do that. It is others around us and even the larger global field ultimately as well.
That is wonderful. Can I ask you just one little question? Can you tell me how would you measure the, I guess, electromagnetic field of the trees or what they put out?
Yeah, so with trees, yeah, in fact, we're launching this year a citizen scientist project. It's a global electrical tree potential monitoring network. So as it turns out, I mean, trees make great research subjects. What I'm saying here is all living systems are in the field. So trees are wonderful because they don't run away. And they don't mind if you put a couple of electrodes in them. So what we're actually measuring is not the field, but we're measuring the electrical potentials of the trees. Be similar to putting electrodes across the body and measuring the heartbeat, or around the head measuring brainwaves. So as it turns out, trees have amazingly complex and fairly substantial voltage levels of electrical potentials they generate. In fact, when we put electrodes in the tree and measure them, the current flows are in, well, voltage levels, I should say, are in millivolts, which is the same level as human heartbeats. I mean, it's amazing. And they have circadian rhythms, and it looks like trees each have their own kind of personality, you know, a certain way when we look at groves of trees. So the idea here, what we'll be doing with it globally, is lots of different types of trees around the world. It's just like with the Global Consciousness Project, which is a global network of physical devices that put out random numbers, and they become less random, right? They shouldn't, but they do. So it's just some type of, these are quantum interface devices, basically, that devices, something is modulating the global field that changes these physical devices in a way that's measurable globally. So it takes lots of people doing that and lots of devices around the planet to show that. So it's the same idea with trees, right? When you have lots of trees being monitored simultaneously, you can then see when certain events happen that evoke a large emotional outpouring, like what's going on right now with all the fear being sent into the field. I wish we had the tree system out already. Just like we can see in the physical devices what our hypothesis is, and we have some evidence to support this, of course, that globally you'll see the trees all responding in a similar way. So when you look globally at lots of trees, you can pull that signal out of the noise, if that makes sense. So for some people that might make sense, but if you just had one tree, you really wouldn't.
The more data you have, the more you're able to see.
Well, you see lots of trees responding in a similar way simultaneously. Now you've got something meaningful, where if it's just a single tree or two, it's, you know.
Yeah, that would be amazing to see the results of that, because I'm sure people have heard that the latest research too is that the trees or even like forest ecosystems communicate, and individual trees communicate through the root systems, sending out or even sharing the nutrients and things like that.
Recognize there's a lot of really neat work going on at the biochemical level, but very little has been done on measuring the electrical activity and the electrical trees. So that's what we're doing.
I think that would totally add to the big picture.
Yeah, and keep in mind, we're doing all of this, whether it's the trees or the global field or the magnetometers, to really help people understand how deeply we really are interconnected and how in sync our heart rhythms are with the Earth's fields. We've already proven this. This is all published in top journals, that these effects really do affect us, and that we are literally synchronized with the Earth. So we're feeding the field. So this is all in the name of helping people understand that we really are interconnected. I mean, how many times have you heard say, well, on some level, we're all connected? I mean, you hear it all the time, at least I do, but it's almost kind of like a, metaphor, or what we're showing here is that, no, we really are. And not just on some level, how the different ways we are interconnected, but all of this is to help people realize, yes, we really are, and what I'm feeding the field matters. So it's all in the name of motivating more and more people to become more self-responsible.
Exactly.
Right, for what we're feeding the field.
Exactly.
And the crazy thing is, as we become more responsible, we're the big winners, right? All the benefits to us in our personal life. It's not about just doing this for others, but no, it's the same thing. So what I'm really suggesting here is that we live in a giant biofeedback system, right? So what we feed the field matters, and what others are feeding the field affects us. So as we collectively can become more compassionate, and it's, right now I would say especially what the earth and the field needs is more compassion. And that can seem really abstract for people sometimes, but it's a very high frequency in the love spectrum. But to maybe help ground that a little bit, think of what we call compassionate latitude, right? So by what I mean by that, you could think it real simple: cut people some slack, right? The stuff we get upset about that somebody does or did is probably something we did ourselves, a week ago or a month ago, or will do next week, right? So tighten up, right? Have some compassionate latitude, right, for ourselves and others, especially as we radiate more compassion, love and compassion, especially into the global field. That is some of the strongest vibrations that help create coherence in our personal and global field.
Yes.
Help offset the current fear, stress waves.
Yes, thank you. So I'm gonna change the name of the summit. Instead of attuning to Mother Earth, we're already here. Just become responsible what you're putting out into the field, what you feed in the field.
Well, yeah, I mean, we certainly want to be attuned to Earth, but I would say even more important is to become attuned to your own heart's intuitive guidance.
Yes. Yes.
And Earth will way come out. Right?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. McCraty. I think that it's been a wonderful conversation, at least, and very clarifying for me. So I just wanted to ask you also, or to tell our audience that Dr. McCraty is going to be offering a free gift to the audience in the form of an ebook, Science of the Heart. So if you'd like to say a few words about that, that's of course in addition to all the things you've already mentioned, on the Heart Math Institute that is free, the app, a ton of resources, it seems like.
Well, I would really encourage people to go search for the global. It's in both the Google and Apple stores, Global Coherence app, and download that and participate. There's notifications that come through and events. So those that want to really participate, those of you that really get it, right, that what we radiate into the field matters and want to participate with others around the world and really helping shift the global field, please go download the app and participate in these events. And if you want to go deeper, go ahead and get one of the sensors to measure your own HRV and learn how to become more coherent. And you can get the sensors at heartmath.org, Heart Math Institute, for those that want. And if you're global around the world, there are Heart Math centers all around the world where you can get these sensors. But the book you're talking about is one of my books, the ebook version, Science of the Heart. Has a number. If you're interested in the science we've been talking about, this is a great book. It's written more at a Scientific American level, and there are, I think, 10 chapters, something like that. So there's chapters on what is heart coherence, our work on intuition. There's a chapter on the Global Coherence Initiative as well, but also work in education in schools for children, chapter on this brought into organizations and business and how it benefits there. But there's always a lot of really good kind of the basic science that's described there. If you want to learn more about the techniques, you can go to our website as well. I would recommend the book called Heart Intelligence. It's the latest book that was co-authored by myself, Doc Childry, the founder of Heart Math, and all my other colleagues. So that's a great kind of inexpensive way to learn some of the techniques. And it's really overcoming our ingrained neural patterns. A lot of times it's helpful to have a coach, right? So there's a lot of reasons for that, how that can really help speed the process up. So if you want to learn something, go a little bit deeper, there's a global network of trainers, Heart Math trainers, coaches, and you can also come to our website there, or just send us an email if you want to have recommendations for a coach or a mentor in your area. We can help with that as well, which I would highly recommend.
Of course, yeah. Seems like this is the way to speed through.
Yeah. Right. No, it's good to have a buddy, right? An accountability buddy, whatever you want.
Accountability, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, to get to it. Thank you so much for sharing that. And for our audience, I will include all the resources below this video for and the others. So Dr. McCraty, thank you so much for being part of the summit. I have learned a lot, and honestly, I'm energized and ready to look these resources up and measure my field and get started and be more
Awesome.
responsible.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, everyone have a wonderful rest of your day.